What's up, movie buffs? I'm Jeremy, and movies are terrible. And I am very excited to be bringing you another take on this Spider-Man No Way Home thing. You guys heard a little bit from me, but I don't feel like we could really have a conversation about Spider-Man No Way Home without bringing on one of the biggest Spider-Man fans that I know, Holden Hardman.
Hey, thanks so much for having me on, man. I'm so glad I'll get to talk about this. I did my review on my channel with Jen, but we have not talked about it, and since then, I've watched it 2 more times.
Oh, okay.
So I'm very fresh. I actually have there are a couple things that I've now noticed, a couple things I love more, and I'm super excited to talk about it.
I kind of want to let you shepherd the conversation if you've seen this thing 3 times, but I
have.
You, myself, I feel like a lot of people, like, Spider-Man is kind of the quintessential superhero. He is, to me, what maybe Superman was to generations before. I feel like maybe he's our generation's definitive superhero, and I think the box office reflects that. This is the second biggest opening of all time. It is the biggest opening of the year, and it is bringing people back to the movie theaters in a way that I didn't think anything could. I'm actually shocked at how well this is doing, especially considering this is the 8th Spider-Man movie and like 11th movie with Spider-Man in it since 2002. So, I mean, it's not as if we're not accustomed to seeing this character, but it's so exciting that people came back out for this movie. What a fucking event film it ended up being. Holden, I got to ask you first before we even get into the movie stuff. How was the theater experience? How was the energy when you went and saw it in the opening weekend? Yeah,
dude, it was great. I didn't get to go to like the first, like the actual first showing. I went on the Thursday, like the 8 o'clock showing. And I will say, like, theater experiences aren't, I think, probably how you and I remember them. I remember like no reserved seating. I remember having to wait in line, people dressed, like everyone dressed up, maybe not everyone, but you're at least wearing a t-shirt, or people are in costume. And I dressed up for this one. I went as Last Stand Spider-Man, so I had like a little cosplay or whatever. And it was like me and like one other guy.
Oh,
so
really?
I was like sticking out real bad. And they actually told me to take the mask off. They said I couldn't wear it. But so in that way, I was like, I don't think it'll ever be the way it used to be. Which is sad, but the actual audience itself, like when those special moments came on screen, they were like pretty reactionary, and which was great. And Jen got to experience that. She had yet to experience like an audience reaction, like where it's less of like we're watching a movie quietly and more of like experiencing the movie.
Yes.
So I love that, and I was getting pretty hyped. I recorded the audio actually for one of my videos and just kept a couple of highlighted key moments in it. And there were a couple moments I was like, yeah, no! Like I was freaking out. I was having a good time.
Oh, I guess I should have said up top, but the thumbnail and the title of the video should have also tipped you off. We're talking to you guys as if you've seen the movie. You've had your chance. It's been out for a week now, so tighten up. Why are you watching YouTube when you could be out watching Spider-Man? Unless, of course, you've already seen Spider-Man, and then you're exactly where you're meant to be. But, yeah, so Holden, I was kind of doing the math in my head after the movie, and I was thinking, as far as audience experience, like what you just now were mentioning, there's The Force Awakens, there was A Quiet Place, there was Avengers Infinity War and Endgame, and then probably the most enthusiastic audience of all of those things that I just mentioned was Spider-Man No Way Home. There were literally 5 or 6 moments throughout the film where the entire audience popped, and that was it's just a cool thing, and the movie is such a love letter, obviously, to the legacy of this character. It does a little something for everybody, whether you're a Raimi original trilogy person, whether you're a Amazing Spider-Man apologist, whether you love this new iteration of Spider-Man. It literally takes all of those things, blends them together into this amalgam film that I feel like it couldn't have been done much better than it was.
Yeah, I think I really enjoyed it. I loved it. Obviously, Toby and Andrew making their surprise. I feel dirty saying that, but we've given our spoiler warnings. Toby and Andrew showing up in it, and I freaked out. Okay, I want to try and kind of break it up. I don't want to just talk about that. I do want to talk about the movie as a whole.
Okay.
So the first half of the movie, I would say, which kind of where Doc Ock and Green Goblin show up, and they're doing their whole trying to do the spell with Doctor Strange and everything. Kind of felt like your regular MCU Spider-Man movie. Felt like Homecoming, Far From Home. I'm like, okay, it's kind of got the similar feelings to it. I've come to accept that with it. Then the latter half was kind of more the Spider-Man that I want as like an audience member. I've griped and complained about the lack of every man feeling Spider-Man has, the lack of any emotional depth to it. People, this entire time, anytime I would give criticism about Homecoming or Far From Home, being like, that's great, it's fun, these are really fun movies, but he's really not Spider-Man. And people are like, oh yes, he is, you're just nostalgia blind. I'm telling you, he's not. And it's nice that where they leave him off, he feels like frickin' Spider-Man. The death of Aunt May, they finally had that moment of great power comes great responsibility. Give us that sweet, sweet fan service we've been asking for. It's just the fact that he would even say, this is not my problem. This is not my responsibility. Guys, that is not Spider-Man, I'm telling you. And that's why he needed to have Aunt May say, no, it is your responsibility. So he can be, people have joked that this is really an origin trilogy. The death of Aunt May, and then even the moment like where he's about to kill the Goblin with the glider and being stopped. All the Spider-Men, like this rite of passage has to be this moment of like seeking revenge, just fury-filled, and then like, no, I can't do this. I have to take a step back. And to the final part, the final nail in the coffin of him being Spider-Man was him wiping everyone's memory, taking that sacrifice, which we've really yet to see him do, seeing MJ and seeing Ned, and then her wiping her hair out, seeing the cut, and basically thinking like, you got that because you know me, because I'm in your life. I love you both, and so for your own safety, because I love you, I can't be here with you. And then choosing to do that, getting his little rinky-dink apartment, having absolutely no support group, and then making his own suit, the classic Spider-Man suit. I'm so much more like, now you are Spider-Man.
Yes.
And I've been waiting for it and wanting it, and people have been, he is Spider-Man. He's just younger, and you can't. It's great that he's young. It's great that he's making Star Wars jokes and that he's a quirky kid. I love that. I think it's great. But now he's Spider-Man. And I'm so much more on board for it.
Vindicated for years of taking shit from Zoomer kids who think they know Spider-Man better than you. That's what I'm taking away from this.
Yeah, I'm like, now you will get to, and it helps me because I've never had anything against Tom Holland. I think that he's been great. My gripe is like he shows up for 15 minutes in Civil War and they're like, this is the best Spider-Man we've ever seen with the greatest depth that there's ever been. No, he's great. This is fun. I love this. I love he's here, but he's not Spider-Man yet, He's Iron Boy Jr. That's been the running gag, the running joke, and it's for a reason because he's not Spider-Man. But now I can he made the sacrifice call. He understands his responsibility. He's solo. I feel like you can't be, he's an everyman now. He's on his own. Even the landlord was like, rent's due first week of the month or whatever. He's there with his little box of stuff. He knows he can't be with MJ or with Ned. I'm sure that will come back around. I don't think that they're going to leave them off there, but as far as now in the story, that's where he's at mentally and emotionally. I'm so much more on board with where he is as a character currently.
Yeah,
Sorry, I'm going on a rant. I'm sorry, man.
No, please, dude. That's why I wanted to talk to you about it, because I agree. I have been a Holland apologist, and not even an apologist, because I've always said, and I've half jokingly, but also completely serious, like, he always needed a daddy. Every single movie, he needed another daddy, whether it be, Tony in the first one, Happy, Nick Fury, Mysterio, just any male figure who's a couple years older than him, he just immediately kind of took to, like, he needed guidance. It was Doctor Strange at the beginning of this movie. Like, there's always some older male figure that kind of, I didn't like that direction. And also, similar to Batman, Spider-Man to me works best alone. Is that to say if they put Daredevil in the next Spider-Man movie, I'm going to automatically hate it? No, they can make that work, I think. But I really do like Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man street level, more focused on crime like Kingpin than Thanos. The way that they used the fact that Peter had worked on a team, I felt like actually worked really well in the context of this movie.
Same.
But there's the thing like where his suit got ripped and Aunt May patched it up. And then at the very end of the movie where you see he's got the sewing machine, he's made the new suit. Now all of a sudden he has to be his own person. And I feel like, yes, we're finally to a point where this is kind of the Spider-Man that we got in the 1990s animated series, or more recently in the PS4 version of it. And I'm here for it, man. I really like it. But at the beginning of the movie, it starts off with the death of Mysterio, and all of a sudden Peter has become the most famous person in all of the world. Half the people are split whether they love him and think that he did the right thing, or whether they think that Mysterio was actually a hero and that Spider-Man is a menace.
Killed all those people and whatnot too.
Yes. What do you think about J. Jonah Jameson as portrayed by J.K. Simmons in this kind of go-round?
I think he's great. I've always thought he's a great J. Jonah Jameson. I think that I'm kind of more partial towards his performance in like the original trilogy.
Same.
He was just kind of funnier. He was kind of more of that stereotypical news reporter that's just always after Spider-Man. This one, he's more of like an Alex Jones kind of joke, selling the supplements and not knowing what he's talking about. I really love that. Another point in favor of the Spider-Man in this movie is that we see Peter being blamed for things that is either a lie or a gross exaggeration of what's happened, which is something that Spider-Man has always dealt with in the comics and in any iteration of being blamed for things that's just straight up not his fault. And we see that here. And that whole moment where it's like Aunt May had just died and he's staring at this screen watching JJ blame him for everything. And some pretty beautiful cinematography in that moment. I'll give that little hat tip to that. So yeah, I love that.
And then, so Peter goes from this situation where he's realized him and his friends can't get into MIT. He goes to Doctor Strange and he proposes basically, let's go back in time. And Steven's like, we can't do that, but we can do this memory wipe spell. I've got questions, man, and I know.
Dude, me too.
All right, go.
Okay, upon watching it a second and third time, basically I question the parameters of that spell. Because I think back to the events of Infinity War when they're like, there's 14 million possibilities. Part of me is like, could you not have performed that simple spell? That spell that you've used it for a lot less to just wipe the stones from everyone's memory, including Thanos? Could you have made Thanos forget about his quest to find the stones?
Oh man. Yeah.
Could if you must protect the Time Stone, could you have wiped everyone's memory except the Sorcerer Supreme? Where nobody even knew about the stone, So I wonder things like that, like why would that not work? And he played it off like the spell really wasn't a big deal. It had been used before, on Wong from like a party.
Yeah.
So and that's just one spell, like a forget spell. So what other more complicated spells could have been used? What other spells might we see in Multiverse of Madness? So I wonder about that. Like, you don't have to beat Thanos with force. You could have just made him forget about his quest. Honestly, if that's too big a spell to make the universe forget, could you have just like wiped Thanos' mind of like everything? Just like where he's basically just like a vegetable, like put him in a vegetative state or something. I don't know.
So we're thinking of two different implication sides of the same coin here, because I'm thinking, what happened to Flash's book? Like, does the memory spell do away with the book? All those videos on social media of Spider-Man and like
that's where I went to, wondering the logistics of the spell.
Yeah.
Like Mary Jane is cut and she's aware that she's cut.
Where did it come from?
What happens?
Yeah.
So the tech, that's something that we probably shouldn't think too much about, or we'll go crazy. And the fact that like at Aunt May's grave, when Happy's like, "How'd you know her?" First off, that's a stab in the heart. Second off, he's like, "I knew her through Spider-Man." So they know, like, so did they work with Spider-Man? Have they worked with Spider-Man this whole time in their memory, but just maybe in their memory he always had the mask when he didn't have it on, or? I don't know. Like, I don't know how that works.
So there is an easy solution to this, though, and it's just a little bit more exposition from Doctor Strange about how the spell works. Because you had to think at some point with the probably half dozen writers that were all involved in this, somebody was like, hey guys, isn't the audience going to wonder like how you can do away with so much documented information? Not a big deal. Did that detract from the movie? No, I didn't even think about it until afterwards. So it's not that it was a huge deal, but I'm glad to hear that you kind of went down that road as well.
Yeah. The second thing I will say, the original spell was, I want to make everyone forget that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. And at some point, and now at the end, he's like, if you did the original spell, would it fix everything? And he's like, yeah, it would. But the spell turned into make everyone forget Peter Parker is Spider-Man to make everyone forget Peter Parker. You know, like, even if Ned and MJ don't know he's Spider-Man, why is their memory of him completely wiped away?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, Ned and Peter, like, I don't know why it was changed, or maybe I thought that they had changed it in the second half to, we're not going to do the original spell, we're going to just make everyone forget you, and that'll fix it. But he said, do the original spell. So I don't know. I don't know about that. I thought that it was going to be, you know, Ned and MJ would still be his friends or whatever, but they just wouldn't remember that he was Spider-Man.
Yeah. And then it's fun to talk about, guys. Look, obviously, both huge fans of it. I got to ask you the one other thing. How the hell did Electro end up in this dimension? Because, like, he didn't know that
Peter Parker. I was racking my brain around that for forever. Like, did he ever find out that Peter Parker was Spider-Man? I have two possible explanations. One is because he teamed up with Harry Osborn in the movie, maybe off screen. He was like, yeah, Peter Parker's Spider-Man, by the way, if things don't pan out. The other explanation could be that, as Doctor Strange explained, there's an infinite number of universes where an infinite number of people know he's Spider-Man. Maybe an Electro from one universe knew that he was Spider-Man, but the way the spell worked pulled the other one, because I think one of them was like, everyone died fighting Spider-Man, and we know that Sandman didn't die fighting him. I don't think Lizard even died fighting him. But maybe they did in some other universe, but the one that were pulled were from The Amazing Spider-Man.
I can dig that. Because I think the assumption is that the characters that we got in this movie were exactly the characters that we got from the other movies. However, they could be any number of variants of just a slightly different version of a character, that maybe this wasn't the one that was in The Amazing Spider-Man 2 that we saw. Maybe it was in The Amazing Spider-Man 2 that we didn't.
And consider Venom. Eddie Brock was pulled, but he doesn't know Peter Parker. But Tobey Maguire fought Eddie Brock in his universe, but the Eddie Brock that was pulled was the one that actually didn't know Peter Parker.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So there might have been, like, Electro from the comic books might have known Peter Parker Spider-Man, but the one that got pulled was the one that didn't. But they're the same person, kind of.
Yeah. Because with the symbiote, it even does say, I believe in Let There Be Carnage, that all of the symbiotes share the same hive mind across all of the different multiverses.
Interesting.
So the Venom imprint has already been on Peter in another
movie universe or whatever.
Right. So there are little things that maybe you just kind of have to suspend your disbelief from. The math part, I feel like, went over super well with the majority of the audience, where there were magic versus math, and Peter figured out the triangulation of the prisms and all of that stuff. I was just like, okay, might as well,
Yeah, whatever. That's fine. Square root it, whatever you do. We can talk about, so the first half being the quirky MCU Spider-Man. We had Doc Ock there, and he's making him a joke, doing this little thing with that, with the arms or whatever.
But I also, I wanted to ask you, did you feel like they were kind of bringing down his level of threat or his intimidation, like the seriousness of that character?
Oh, I love the fight on the bridge with Doc Ock. I thought it was awesome. Him picking up these huge concrete things and smashing them around. At the same time, kind of like Doctor Strange, there are these moments I forget he's like a kid, where he's like doing the little arm thing, and the moment where he's like, what's your name? Otto Octavius? And they're like, that's funny. I'm like, oh yeah, they're kids. I forget sometimes. It was okay. I didn't really complain about that. Where was I going to go? The latter half, like, I think, like, when you get all the villains there and they're doing their little fun things, like, we're going to fix you guys. I feel like the moment that Peter webs Goblin's hand is the moment the tone shifts for the positive to things are about to happen that will affect everything now on. Because after that moment, the villains are like, it's go time. Because even the villains are jokey and chummy, and Jamie Foxx is not really even acting the same way he did in the first Amazing Spider-Man, but you know, it's whatever. Oh, and he got his body back. That's cool. We're not going to explain that. I don't really care. But that's just a thing that was never really addressed. He webs Goblin. Goblin beats the living daylights out of him, like mercilessly. And we have yet to really see that happen in the MCU with Spider-Man. We've seen him in battles. We've seen him get hurt. But he is, not only is he getting beaten, but Goblin is doing that classic like psychological warfare. He's making comments to him throughout the whole thing. He's scary in this, like when he's beating him and you just see his like goblin face smiling it. I love that, dude. The death, which leads obviously to the death of Aunt May. And tonally, everything changes there. Tom Holland gives his best performance, in my opinion, to date over like a death. I think it beats even his Iron Man death in Endgame. My one gripe about the death, and I say this with a grain of salt, maybe I should praise it first. I loved it. I think it was fantastic. I think it was needed. I'm even okay with it not being Uncle Ben that said it and it being Aunt May and that being the kind of catalyst for him, you know, for his Uncle Ben is Aunt May. I'm totally fine with all that. My one caveat about it is I feel like it's a case of they're having their cake and eating it too with the way they treated Aunt May throughout this entire thing. Aunt May and pretty much every other iteration has been this wise figure, this motherly figure towards Peter. And in the MCU, she's essentially just been a joke of like, Aunt May's hot. They really haven't had like these deep moments between them that I would come to have loved. And I can't think of one moment in the MCU where I was like, wow, you know, that was a really great loving mother-son relationship moment with Peter and Aunt May.
This movie, I thought, at the soup kitchen with Norman.
Maybe a moment. They had like a brief conversation that was a precursor to the great power comes great responsibility, where he's like, it's not our duty to help them. We just got to get them back. I thought that was a precursor, but no real like I think in Amazing Spider-Man, where he's like, I got to get the eggs, and she's like, you're my kid, you know, you're my son, and then obviously Aunt May had 1,000 of them in Raimi. So from her being a joke to even having a fling with Happy and that just being a running gag from the past few movies, to Peter, you've always been this thing to me. All that to say, I just wish that they had given a little bit more emotional connection and depth with Aunt May and Peter in some of the other movies, even for just a brief moment, to make that death hit a little bit harder. That would be my only real critique. I still think it hit well. I still think it works. But that would be the only thing I wish, if I could tweak, it would have been something like that.
I get what you mean. That is a little bit different. Like what the scene that I referenced was more, like you said, a precursor to that lesson that he has to learn. But it wasn't a scene about how strong their familial bond was or how much Peter necessarily meant to her in that same way. Like you said, there are distinct moments in the other two series. I will say though, I feel like because May did get to share so much more screen time with Peter than Ben did in either of the other series, that I did feel even though maybe her scenes weren't impactful in the same kind of way as the original Uncle Ben, I felt like they weren't just simply used. She kind of got fridged, but it was on the heels of being a well-established character where Uncle Ben essentially just gets fridged. He's there to die in the first movies, you know?
Yeah. So, I'm not saying I'm right or my view is the right way. Personally, that's something
right?
That's just something I personally would have wished might have been switched. But I get it. She has been there. I think like in Far From Home, she's picking him up from the airport. He does call her. She put the suit in his suitcase. Even the lawyer or the FBI agent, he's not even FBI, he's DODC agent or whatever he is like you knowingly told him to be pursuing and doing these things without a second thought. And even a moment where she like has a moment of like, should I be letting my 16-year-old kid do this unquestioningly? Even just a moment where she like considers, that's not safe for him, but she's just always like, sure, go ahead, put yourself in danger. Just like a moment that you like care. I don't know.
I get it. So okay, we've talked a bit about the villains, we've talked a bit about the Doctor Strange plot. You mentioned Goblin, and I want to say that this is the best version, in my estimation of the Green Goblin that we've got, even more so than the original Spider-Man film. And I think the reason why is, like you said, his goblin face. The fact that he's been broken free of this mask that really does hide a lot of what makes Willem Dafoe so great in the first place is awesome. And then to see that he's so maniacal, he's so villainous, that he is causing problems from one end of the multiverse to the other. He has become this Spider-Man's main foil as well as Tobey Maguire's main foil. So I really liked that.
What a cool thing that he was like, he's the crutch for Raimi Spider-Man and also the driving force to making Tom Holland into Spider-Man. I love that. That's so cool. It's so trippy. I never would have thought in a million years.
Yeah. What did you think about the way each of the different Peters was represented years on from when they were shown in their own films? Do you think that the interplay between them worked? What are your kind of thoughts on each of those?
So the first time we see Andrew Garfield show up, I didn't recognize him because obviously they had him down the alley. You can kind of see his eyes or whatever. And I could hear everyone being like, "Oh, what is that? Who's that? Is that?" Huh? And then I look and he shows up and it's Andrew Garfield Spider-Man. Everyone freaks out. He takes his mask off and it shows Andrew Garfield. Everyone freaks out even more. I loved it. I thought that Andrew Garfield's character was pretty much exactly the same way it was in the Amazing Spider-Man movies. I saw them again not even that long ago. I think we all watched them together. Were you there when we did My Friend Watches Amazing Spider-Man 2?
I remember.
Oh, okay. Well, so it's kind of more fresh on my mind. So his character is pretty much the same. Even those moments where he's sticking on the roof and the bread's hitting him and he's like, "Why did you do that?" Why? Very much who he is. Tobey Maguire shows up. Everyone freaks out, me included. I'm so freaking hyped. Because even though I knew he would be there, it's different when it actually is happening. Even when the movie ended, I was like, did that really just happen? The only thing about Tobey is that it's his I don't know if it's this wiser, older Spider-Man. He was a lot more monotone. I'm so used to him kind of being more chippy and trying to stay positive despite crap happening, and he was so much more low key and filtered and hi. I'm looking for your friend. It was much lower. And it kind of stayed that way throughout, even the rooftop conversation where he's must also come great responsibility. He was just more monotone, lower energy. I know that when they did the ADR for the actual Spider-Man sequences where he's doing this, whoa, all right, guys, I'm heading this way. That seemed to be more of his usual Spider-Man self to me. But it was really interesting. I loved it. I loved seeing Tobey come back. I loved the moment of seeing Tobey and Andrew just interacting together and their interactions throughout. Even the popping your back.
Yeah, dude, that was great.
An inside joke with Tobey, obviously, and then just seeing them just playfully being around each other. I wonder from an outside perspective, and I've been wondering this, was there any amount of resentment from one to the other? Tobey, he was going to be in Spider-Man 4 only to be replaced by this kid who really had been in, I think he was in The Social Network at the time, but really wasn't the established actor he is today. But this kid is replacing him. That's got to, it stings, doesn't it? That's got to sting a little bit. To Andrew Garfield, who was in 2 iterations of Spider-Man. The Avengers were already out when Amazing Spider-Man was coming out, and there were rumors at the time of, are they going to have Oscorp Tower be in the skyline in Avengers or vice versa? Only to be replaced by this kid who's playing a 15-year-old who's, first 5 minutes in the movie, everyone's already saying, Andrew sucks, this guy's way better than you in every way.
Yeah.
That's got to be rough, and on top of there being kind of an LA movie actor culture where everyone competes and, egos, people have egos. So I wonder, I wonder how that went down. That's something we'll probably never see, and they'll probably never talk about, aside from just the general, I love these guys and they're great and everything.
Yeah.
But how, really, I would imagine I would imagine it was pretty interesting, or there must have been some pretty closed doors conversations and whatnot. But
I imagine it would probably have to stay, and this is just speculating because I think that's a really interesting point, and I didn't think about it, but I feel like Garfield kind of got the raw end of the deal more than the other than Maguire did, because I feel, and I don't know this, but I feel like Raimi and Maguire had kind of run their course with the franchise by the time the 4th one was supposed to come out, because I don't think it was a great experience for either of them for the 3rd film.
Yeah.
Maguire, I feel like his tenure was cut short. I mean, excuse me, Garfield, I felt like his tenure was cut short. Like, they intended on doing more.
Yeah.
And then because of part 2 being such a failure, I think that, or not such a failure, but a relative failure, they went this other direction, and we're just like, sorry. But to me, I love the Raimi trilogy as well, but to me, this did the most for Andrew Garfield of any of the Spider-Man. Well, Tom Holland had a huge thing of growth as well, obviously, but I just feel like from where people saw Andrew Garfield's Peter Parker / Spider-Man before this movie to then afterwards, like, it makes me appreciate him so much more. And I didn't even care for, I don't like The Amazing Spider-Man or The Amazing Spider-Man 2 all that much, but I sure do like him a lot more now.
Yeah, I think No Way Home provided a lot of closure for us, for me, for Tobey Maguire, for one thing.
Yeah.
Because Spider-Man 3 ended with him on a rocky footing with MJ.
Yeah.
And I was always like, did they work things out? That's always what I've wondered. And the fact that they just gave me that one line of him saying, you know, it's complicated, but we work things out. You know, like, thank you. That's all I need. That's all I needed. I just needed to know that. And then with Andrew Garfield, basically, kind of, like you said, having this. Making us appreciate those movies even more, because he really is a great Spider-Man, you know, and I feel like there were other factors that detracted the quality of his movies that were out of his control. And then also giving me the closure with Tom Holland as Spider-Man, putting him exactly where I want him to be. So this single movie it provided closure for 2 other films, while also establishing where the character should be going forward.
Yeah.
So in that way, it's wonderful. I loved it for that.
My most emotional moment to me was when Andrew Garfield caught MJ. I thought that moment was just beautiful. His face sells so much, and just he just breaks down crying once he catches her, and it's just like, talk about a redemptive moment for that character.
Yes.
But then another thing I want to bring attention to, and then I know we're going a little bit long, but the scene where the 3 Peter Parkers are all sciencing stuff together was incredible, because they are all ultimately Peter Parker. The essence of who Peter Parker is there for all 3 of them. They're all science nerds. They're all super geniuses, but then there's also the thing that makes each of them distinct, and I really like that moment.
I love that too. Some final remarks. Ned doing magic. I don't think I ever talked about it in my review. I wasn't crazy about that. It seemed too easy, especially considering Doctor Strange's struggle with it, and I felt like that was kind of a cop-out in some. I have no problem with him doing magic, just kind of the way they went about it. Dragon Ball Z problem in Dragon Ball Z, becoming a Super Saiyan was such a high bar, so difficult to accomplish. Only for, in the later episodes, children just did it without even thinking.
Yeah.
I felt it was similar in that regard. We talked about the ending. They gave us a final swing in one of these movies, which was nice. It was short, but it was nice seeing them ending with his new suit, swinging in New York, which I loved. But overall, I love the movie, and I could talk about it even longer, but I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, it was a pleasure, man. I really did enjoy it. Hopefully we'll have more conversations about more MCU stuff in the future, because I don't see that train slowing down anytime real soon, man.
Heck yeah, dude.
All right, well, thank you guys for stopping by to be a part of this conversation. As always, make sure to leave your thoughts down in the comments section. We love to hear from you. Any things that we missed that you just absolutely loved, any little plot holes that maybe we overlooked that you noticed, let's just discuss down in the comments section. And if you want to stay up to date with all of the content that we're putting out over here on Movies Are Terrible, all you got to do is subscribe. Click the bell to enable notifications, and then cross your fingers that those notifications come through.
For real, yeah.
On behalf of both me and Holden, and until next time, be terrible.